Welcome to In Studio. I'm Gordon, and I'm joined here by Prabhdeep Singh, the newly appointed CEO of Steno. Court reporting and litigation support are often overlooked corners of the legal industry. Yet depositions, transcripts, the record itself, those are essential to every case, and for decades, it ran on the same playbook. Steno took a different route. They built a technology-first litigation support company, and in 7 years, they've gone from the new kid on the block to a scaled challenger and real industry pioneer. Prabh recently stepped into the CEO role at Steno, but for the past several years, he's been central to building the team and driving Steno's growth engine. Prabh, welcome to In Studio.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Prabh, we'll just jump right in. Steno began with the co-founder Dylan Ruga's frustration as a plaintiff attorney, and specifically at how much depositions were costing him. Walk us through the problem Steno set out to solve originally and why it's gone unsolved for so long.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, it's a pretty interesting story. You know, Dylan was a white shoe attorney at Steptoe Johnson, and then decided to hang up his own shingle and become a plaintiff attorney in LA. And a few years into that journey, he started to realize his costs were building up. And when he started to look at his own P&L as someone who's owned his own law firm, he realized that court reporting depositions were eating up a ton of cost. And so he just went around to the different court reporting agencies at that time and said, hey, these cost me a lot of money. Is there any way you can defer the payments for a little bit so I can take on more depositions, do more cases, et cetera? And they all basically said no. And Dylan had actually had a prior relationship with Greg Hong, who was a tech entrepreneur in the restaurant tech space. His co-founder at that company was Dan Anderson, who's the CTO of Steno. And he reached out to him and said, hey, like, I'm not an entrepreneur, but this seems like a pretty interesting idea. What if we actually figured out a way to defer payments on things like court reporting? And that was kind of the origin story of Steno 7 or 8 years ago now. And, from there, I think both Dan and Greg, who both came from the tech space, was like, look, deferring payments is a really interesting idea. But as we look at this space, there's just no technology anywhere, really. This industry has really been, strung together with duct tape and Excel sheets and things like that. And so they really said, look, there's a real opportunity for us to build a technology business here, in addition to building this unique opportunity to defer payments. That was 7 or 8 years ago. That thesis still kind of plays today and is working for us today.
So Prabh, you're entering the CEO role at what I'd argue is like an incredible point in time for Steno and its history, a point of significant momentum and growth. What does this mean to you? What changes? What stays the same as you take on this new role?
Yeah, well, it means a lot. I mean, the last 2 years have been great. I've been in the trenches, as you said, working with the leadership team, the founders, to figure out where we want to take the company. We've been growing a lot. I think for me, because I've been here for the past 2 years, the vision is one that I've been a big part of. So I don't think it's changing. It's actually just figuring out, hey, how do we realize this at scale? When you go from a small boat to a bigger boat, things get harder. You can't just look across the side and yell to your team. You got to communicate better. You got to think about how to manage all the teams, across functional stuff. We have more products, more services, more tech. Internally, a lot of what I talk to the team about is this idea of missionary versus mercenary. What's going to make us win in the long horizon is having a team of missionaries. And that all comes down to culture and leadership. And so a lot of what I need to do is take the culture that was already set and scale it. In addition to doing all the other things you need to do to scale, that's the real thing I think about all the time.
That's awesome. Well, we're excited about the new role for you. Let's talk about the industry a little bit. When you think about court reporting, kind of broad litigation support, there's some deeply entrenched, some large players that have been there for a while, and you hit on kind of Steno's technology first approach. But what does that mean in practice, and how does that give Steno a competitive advantage in the market?
Yeah. Well, court reporting is sort of a barbell industry. So on the one hand, you have a lot of mom and pop companies. They don't have a lot of technology, but they're very local, very great at service. They're serving a need in a very local environment. On the other hand, you have 5 or 6 private equity-backed companies that are really low-tech companies that followed sort of the PE roll-up playbook. They really grew through inorganic acquisition. They acquired a bunch of court reporting companies. They smashed them together, and then they rolled them out. And so those companies weren't really built with a tech mindset. If you juxtapose that to what Steno is, we started as a tech company, VC-backed, first-round capital, the LegalTech Fund, companies that think about growth and tech in a very different way than where the legacy companies came from. And so we approached the industry day one with, hey, where can we bring tech in to make this a better business for the customer, for us, for our investors, et cetera? And so practically what that means is we have a really large Silicon Valley style tech team that can build anything that we need. And a lot of it is the world is changing very fast. You guys know that just as well as anybody else. So a lot of it is really just us having this awesome team that can nimbly build as the market evolves. In terms of what we have out in the market, there's a couple different dimensions. The first is just what I would call tech-enabled experience. We use technology to make it easy to work with us. If you're a client, that means easy to book a deposition, easy to access documents, easy to share exhibits when you're doing your deposition, easy to get your bill. Just making everything that was manual and clunky with the way that the legacy competitors have done things, and just make it simple, the way a consumer company would do. On the court reporting side, we have a whole marketplace for court reporters that didn't exist before. Court reporters to this day are, being booked out through spreadsheets that people keep on their desk. We built a modern marketplace to book court reporters. And then on the AI side, as you guys know, we built a lot of AI tools. The thesis was basically, hey, we have all of this awesome data through transcripts and other documents that we're getting for our clients. Let's build AI tools on top of that we can deliver right back to our clients. So doing all of that just makes us a pretty unique and differentiated offering in a world where, again, it's for many, many years been a very low tech experience.
Maybe further to the question here, you operate in an industry where relationships are very important, and you just talked about your technology first approach. Where are we in this journey of that industry where, to what extent that matters versus some of those entrenched relationships, and how do you operate across kind of both fronts?
Yeah. The truth is both matter. I think, there's a lot of tech companies that I think right now are chasing different elements of the legal ecosystem. And some of them I think are taking too much of an outside-in approach of, hey, we're just going to build tech and people will come, and, we don't need to go and, shake hands and kiss babies. You absolutely do. Like, this is still legal, is still a very fragmented local business. You have to build those relationships. Now we're building those relationships, but we're also delivering the great tech. I think what that means is that we can have a deeper level of trust and stickiness once we have those relationships, because it's like, hey, we like you, we know you're a human, you're a good person, you've come and you've talked to us, you've explained to us what you have, but you also have this offering that, coupled with your great service, I don't want to go anywhere else, right? And that's kind of how we think about that.
I love it. On the platform side and some of those technology investments that have been core to Steno, you touched on AI at the end. Maybe comment a little bit on Transcript Genius, what that is, and the excitement from that. I probably have a little bit of inside baseball and some ways where you're headed a little bit, but I think there's probably some exciting product announcements coming in the not too distant future. What can you share with us about where Steno's headed?
Yeah, so if you rewind back 2.5 years ago, we were the first company in our space to really go deep with AI. Early partner with Claude, we saw the opportunity very early. And we've been, for the last 2.5 years, we've got thousands of people that have used our AI tools, many of which are active users and love it. We've learned a lot. So I think the first thing we learned is people really like the low friction experience. So what does that mean? It's really easy, as I just described, for you to take a deposition with us, right? We made that process simple to book and then take that deposition. That transcript shows right up in their dashboard with us. That, again, is all seamless and integrated. And then boom, within one click, they're interrogating a transcript in this like purpose-built tool. I think people love that low friction experience where sort of the service and the tech is combined in one seamless experience. The second thing is everybody's building AI. I don't have to tell you guys that. Like, every single company has their own tool, whether it's, or people are using Claude. And so we know that our tool has to be great on its own and has to be purpose-built. So when you go to Transcript Genius, I think it's the best tool for interrogating transcripts in the world. And it's different than a lot of other tools out there because we've just been so intentional about, hey, this use case, we've got to be great at it. And it can't just be a cookie cutter use case. And that's why we have lots of clients who have bought all of the other tech tools out there, but they still use Transcript Genius for this use case because they're like, it works the best. And I think the third one is we just have gotten so many feature requests from people being like, this is great. Can we do these 10 other things? Like, can you do this for me now? And the combination of those three things has informed what we're doing next, which is really saying, okay, how do we keep pulling on that thread, right? Low friction experience, purpose-built AI technology that sits on top of our data. How do we build features intentionally that are going to be good or better than what they can get in the outside world, right? Because we know that we're competing against everything out there, including just popping into Claude yourself. And so we're building more tools. That's like the highlight of it. And because we, at the end of the day, are a tech-enabled service company, we make money doing that, we're not constrained. We don't have to think about building every single thing for everybody. We just have to build great stuff. So everything we put out there is going to be great.
Yeah. You kind of alluded to like it's a decently noisy time in the market from an AI perspective. Everyone is building something. There's alternatives, off the shelf, easy to use alternatives that maybe aren't purpose built, but all that creates noise. Just curious, in your space, as you guys want to lean forward as that kind of technology pioneer, how do you deal with some of that noise? Presumably, you're seeing people like overselling a little bit. Like, I don't know, help it. What's real? What's not? Where are we in your industry as it pertains to kind of AI adoption?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we think about it and talk about it every day. There is an incredible amount of noise. On the one hand, I really try to focus our team on just staying the course. We obviously don't want to like put blinders on and ignore what's out there, but this is inning 1 or 2 of legal tech, as I'm sure you know, and you guys believe in with your thesis. And so, hey, we have to stay the course. Like, we can't just get distracted with everything that's out there. I think there are a lot of companies that are trying to figure out how to build a moat, right? How can we genuinely have a moat? And in a post-AI world, it's a really hard thing because ultimately everybody can build tech now. I mean, AI is sort of leveling the playing field for software. And so you have to think really creatively around what that is. I think for us, we think data distribution, building an enduring business and brand is going to be a moat for us. At the end of the day, like, everybody can copy software. So, yes, I think we'll have better software than people that don't know how to build great software, but people can copy software, right? So they'll catch up eventually. And so you have to do everything else great, which is not AI. You have to have like the best freaking service in the world. You have to do that right. When someone calls you, you pick up the phone. Like, that stuff matters as much as the tech matters.
Yeah. You use data distribution and brand, and I think that's fascinating as companies have to look inward to think about what their core competencies are and how they compete in the world. When you think about those things relative to depositions as maybe your wedge product, and as you mentioned, you believe that you guys do that better than anyone else in the world, there are conceivably other things you can do as well as you take more of a platform approach. Anything you can comment on kind of where Steno goes from that perspective?
Yeah. So today, in addition to court reporting, we offer service of process and e-filing. So we do more than court reporting. And we're looking at doing more. I think like the ultimate goal is for us to have a really good, seamless one-stop shop experience, right? Litigators, if you think about what they have to do, whether they're more focused on the pre-litigation side or they're taking more depositions, there's this whole litigation lifecycle, all the way from something happens to someone to, there's a settlement. And that whole process, there's all sorts of things you need to do. You need to retrieve medical records. You need to do filings. You need to do the deposition. There's all these things. And oftentimes you'll see litigators who have to go and like string together 3 or 4 different partners to make it all happen and make it all go. And there have been companies out there that have tried to do that, say, hey, we're going to do all the things, but they've done it more from the perspective of like, hey, this is just a good way to make more money versus how do I make this a better, more seamless experience? And so honestly, when you look at companies that have chased the one-stop shop kind of vision, they haven't done it really well, which is why when we talk to so many clients, they're like, well, we use you for court reporting. We use this guy for this gal for this. And like, we string it all together. It's like, no, it has to be something where the sum of the parts is better, right?
Yeah.
If we can actually get to a place where, hey, 1 + 1 is 3 in terms of experience, people are going to respond to that. And we are going to be the most sticky player out there. I'll touch on one other thing. I think at the core, we are a growth technology startup kind of culture. And what that means is we want to build things the right way. There's a lot of people in our space that just acquire their way into new areas. Our perspective is like, look, we need to understand things at our core, meaning me as a CEO, our founders, we get our hands dirty on trying to understand these other areas, because if we can understand them at the fundamental level, we're going to drive differentiation into how we build them or how we end up serving our clients with them. In that way, like, we are going to have the best in class experience across all of our categories versus having like depositions are A+ and this thing is over here as a C+, but okay, we're just going to try to make money off of people. No, it's like they all have to be at that A level experience. And the only way to do that in my mind is that like organic build approach. Like, we do it ourselves. We know how it works.
I love it. Let's switch gears slightly. Steno recently announced the closing of your Series C financing. We were excited to be a part of that. I think this was definitely a double, was maybe a triple down for us, which I think speaks to our excitement and conviction in what y'all are doing and building. What can you share with how you plan to put that capital to work?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you and Zach and the TLTF team. You guys have been awesome partners. I think the short answer, just to keep it really simple, it's primarily growth and building. So, sales and engineering, those are the big areas that we are doubling down on in terms of team spend. We aren't out there looking to acquire companies right now. It's really the focus is on, hey, we've got this great model, but we need more people to help us take it to more places. We almost have like more demand than we can fulfill because we don't have boots on the ground in all these new markets. I touched on this earlier a little bit, but every legal market is different. So New York is very different than California. The way court reporters operate, the way lawyers operate, the types of cases that matter. Interestingly enough, if you just think about a simple use case, if you're in LA, it's easy to maybe get to places because it's a city. Imagine if you're like in a rural place, like how do you solve getting court reporters or people to, to a venue? There's all these kind of like local nuances. So we just need the resources and the team to go win those markets locally. On the tech side, I talked a lot about it, but we're building a ton of technology. And so we just need a larger team to be able to fulfill all those goals.
That's great. Well, I do want to dig into the team a little bit more. In the conversations we've had over the years, it's clearly a significant focus of yours. And I think you've taken that as a mission. And you brought in Adam to help you run litigation support, Sean to help run some operations. I think there's been some other kind of ELT or senior leadership team members that have been added. Talk a little bit about some of those people and maybe broadly, I guess, what does that signal about Steno, where you're headed and like the profile of those people and what you're hoping to accomplish?
Yeah. It's been an awesome time. I mean, in the last year, we brought on a bunch of really senior people. What I tell people is like, these are people that had no business being in court reporting in some ways, right? We do like to bring in, I think, a lot of different types of profiles in, because I think the more different perspectives you bring in, the better outcome you're going to have. Adam's a veteran of LegalTech, been in it his whole career, sold his company to InfoTrack. He really understands kind of the industry. And so you can kind of think about him as like an inside out person. He comes from the industry and can kind of think innovatively from the industry. Sean, similar to my background, came from high growth tech companies, was also at EvenUp. So he really can think about it a little bit more from that outside in perspective. And the blending of those two things, inside out, outside in, is kind of what makes you a special leadership team and company. But the thread across a lot of the newer people we just brought in a CHRO, we just brought in a head of sales, is really bringing in people that have seen some scale, but also kind of share our core values. So to unpack that for a second, like obviously we're looking for A players to bring into the business, but I think a lot about it is like maybe two core things. Like it's the culture, fit, and growth mindset. We are not just a normal company. We are growing extremely fast. We've got hundreds of people, $100 million of revenue. We need people that can kind of operate at that pace with our culture. We have a very low ego, execution oriented culture. We need people that can kind of match that. And what I try to say about that is it's like a T-shaped leader. T-shaped leader is basically you're a broad and deep person naturally. So you can think broadly across different areas, cross-functional stuff, marketing, sales, like people, but then you're just super deep. You need to be able to go in the weeds, understand the unit economics of your team and your department and what you're doing, because when you're moving so fast, I've worked at a lot of startups at this point. You as the senior most person, you need to be able to make decisions fast. And if you don't know actually how things work, you're just going to be trusting someone else ultimately to make a decision. And federating out decisions is what makes companies slow and clunky. So for us, it's again, like, how do I get outside in and inside out leaders? And how do I make sure they're T-shaped leaders? If I bring those together, we win.
Yeah, I think it's just such a salient point when you think about Steno at its current impressive scale, the growth, how you can continue that without like the bureaucracy, like you said, of just someone making a decision based on someone else, and it kind of flows down. And it seems, I think that concept of the T-shaped leader is fascinating, and I love it. And I think it probably will continue to allow that culture to flourish at Steno as you continue to compound and scale to even greater size.
Yep, 100%.
Prabh, it's been a great conversation. I got one more for you, and I tend to always end with the crystal ball question. So I want you to pull that out, think through your industry, broad litigation support services, 3+ years out. What does that look like, and what's Steno's role in that?
I'll start with one quick story, which I think is indicative of how I think about this world. So before I was in legal, I was actually helping lead a business in the healthcare space. And there's some parallels between legal and healthcare that I think are kind of interesting. So 10 or 15 years ago, you saw billions of dollars go into the health tech space. I was part of it at that point too. I remember watching this happen. And I remember this very specific time when someone was up on a stage saying like, in a few years, you'll never have to go to a doctor's office and fill out paperwork on a clipboard with that little tiny type where you don't know where to put your name or your email address, right? 3 months ago, I live in New York City. I was at a doctor's office, and the first thing they did was like hand me a clipboard with small type font and say, "Prabh, can you fill out your name and your insurance number?" And I was like, it's just like wild, because there's been way more billions of dollars that have been spent into health tech than legal tech, right? But that industry still hasn't fully transformed in the way you think it's going to change. And I think the reason is like industries just take time to change. They're on a longer time horizon than you think.
Yeah.
And we're also a regulated industry like healthcare, right? Not as regulated, but we are also regulated. Court reporting is a regulated industry. And so I think part of that is just having a little bit of this like sober reality of like, we might want the industry to change at like 100x speed, but it's going to change at 10x speed. So you have to think about how do you meet people where they are versus trying to jump ahead to the future and operate in the future space. So I just say that as like a preamble to how I think about the crystal ball question. Things are moving super fast. I don't think in a few years, if you are in our space and you're not tech first, I don't think you can compete. I think the way in which you, for example, book or take a deposition, the way in which you can, the expectations that clients are going to have in terms of like how they get documents, all of that, the level is just going to keep going up and up and up. So it's going to be table stakes, I think, pretty soon in our industry to be tech forward in general. But to my earlier question, everybody's going to be building tech. Everybody's going to be leveraging Claude. At the end of the day, it goes down to the stuff I told you about before. Like, we just got to be focused on best service in the world, best brand in the world, like continuing to be innovative, like those core things that we've always been about. Just need to keep like moving forward that way. I don't really have a crystal ball in terms of whether, some crazy hot take on the industry. It's just that, hey, things are gonna move a little bit slower than people probably think, and you need to be focused on all the things outside of AI to succeed when AI is a pretty commoditized service that everybody can access.
I love the focus. I really do. Prabh, as I mentioned before, it's been a pleasure to be partners with you and the entire Steno team. We're excited about your new role. It's well deserved, and excited about your leadership of the business moving forward. So Prabh, thank you for joining me in studio.
Thank you, Gordon. It's been awesome.